Spooky Ghost UFO Boo! Curse of the Mothman. This story was posted by Magnificent Mr. Zoozles on funtelligence.com. I'm a skeptic, but recently I had what some would call a paranormal experience. It wasn't, of course, and I will be more than happy to explain why in the most condescending terms I can. But first, let me tell you a bit about myself. I'm a magician by trade, but lately business hasn't been as good as it once was. I asked my agent what the problem might be, and he told me that grown adults no longer seem to enjoy watching a middle-aged man in a tuxedo standing on stage, pretending to be a wizard. I'm now supplementing my income as a professional debunker. I know that sounds like a made-up sex act, and believe you me, it's led to more than a few misunderstandings at bachelor parties. I investigate paranormal claims and find out what's really going on. Between that and my self-published dinosaur erotica, I'm able to make a pretty good living. Debunking is kind of like magic, actually. Does your bed and breakfast have a bittersweet story about a lonely widow calling out to her husband lost at sea? Poof. Now it's an improperly secured vent cover and acoustically reflective basement tiles, amplifying the sound of air in the sewage pipe. You're quite welcome. But enough about me. Recently I have experienced a series of strange occurrences that almost seem like something paranormal. Now, I hate to disappoint you guys. I know that whenever the cat knocks over a lamp, some people take the first train to Kooky Town. But I have an explanation for everything that happened during this time. Just a warning, by the way. I went to grad school for medieval biostatistics, so the language might be a little advanced for some of you. We had recently moved to a new house, in a new town. It was a beautiful old Victorian mansion. The realtor had mentioned something about a curse, which I immediately and loudly laughed off. Curses, I told him, were not real, and only superstitious cave persons believe in them. It was early April when we settled in, a slow time for debunking. In a few weeks I would get into shape by visiting local summer camps and fact-checking their campfire stories, but for now it was pretty quiet. Halloween was still months away, and then of course would be Christmas, where I run a seminar explaining to children that Santa doesn't exist. My wife had been on edge since we moved in. She kept telling me that she saw a large figure lurking in the woods. The curse talk must have gotten to her, I reasoned. I told her that it was most likely a hobo, which didn't seem to help much. It wasn't long after that conversation that she ran up to me, all in a tizzy, telling me she'd seen something in the backyard. She said it was tall, wide, apparently headless, but had a pair of huge burning red eyes where the shoulders would have been on a male stripper. I stifled a chuckle. It sounded like a very biologically unlikely creature indeed. She informed me that it was standing by the gazebo at that very moment. I was quite busy perfecting a new hanky illusion and didn't have time for her flights of fancy. I assured her that it was simply an owl. She then informed me that it was well over 10 feet tall, and I had to shake my head. Clearly then, I told her, it must have been a small pile of owls that were clumped together for warmth or sex. For some reason this didn't convince her, but she left for a few minutes, so same diff. Soon afterwards, though, she returned with an even crazier story. Apparently, good old Mr. Mothman was now standing on the back porch, licking the patio window. I calmly explained to her that it was a humid evening, and that sometimes refraction, combined with differences in barometric pressure, can create a magnifying effect, causing things to appear larger than they actually were. Of course, this logical explanation was not accepted, and my wife launched into a description of the alleged creature. It was standard stuff. Long, spindly fingers ending in razor-sharp claws, a huge cavernous mouth full of shark teeth, and eyes that burn with the eldritch fires of some inferno of eternal suffering before which sanity withers like a fragile twig and only desolation remains. Oh boy, if I had $1 for every time I heard that one. My wife, I love the old girl, but she is terrible for misidentifying wildlife. If she'd only took the time to study science, as I do on Facebook, she'd have known that owls and alligators have a codependent relationship, where the owls will clean bits of tuna out of the alligator's teeth. This, combined with the humidity, barometric pressure, and possible owl orgy, was producing the illusion of an interdimensional demon creature. Look it up, it's nature. She left again, and all was quiet for the remainder of that evening, apart from a deafening cacophony of tortured animal screams. But hey, that's April for you. Over the next couple of weeks, my wife would occasionally check in with more Mothman reports. Mothman is flying over the house. Mothman opened a hell vortex in the garden. Mothman is exploding a deer in slow motion with his mind. Oh, it was all so silly, I didn't know what to do. It was about a week later when I realized our parlor might need some sprucing up. I'm not too handy with a paintbrush, so I hired a painter to do the job for me. After agreeing on an amount, he set to work and I went down to my man cave to put the finishing touches on a foam ball trick I was sure would redefine the genre. I almost had it perfected when I was interrupted, once again, by my wife's scream. So annoying. I found her curled up in the corner of the kitchen in a puddle of her own fear puke. She was babbling about having seen the Mothman again. Since she seemed upset, I decided to hear her out. This time, she said, he was in the house, headed to the parlor. I smiled and shook my head. Maybe we should be charging him rent, I quipped. She punched me in the scrotum and left for a week or so. My wife can punch a mean scrotum, so it took me a moment to recover. Once I did, I made my way upstairs to find out that, of course, there was no Mothman. The parlor was slicked with gore, though, and there was no sign of the painter anywhere. In fact, the only thing left in the room was a severed human ass. Now, someone who didn't know as much science as I do might have been a little freaked out by this. But with even a small amount of critical thinking, the answer wasn't so mysterious. The poor man had simply fallen off his ladder and onto the ventilation fan, vaporizing him instantly. A tragic accident to be sure, but nothing supernatural. Once again, everything went quiet on the Mothman front for a while, and I was able to get some real work done. This was a good thing, because I had gotten a magic gig in the old age home in town and I needed to work up an act geared towards an older audience. I went online and ordered an interlocking ring illusion. This audience would be in their 80s, and the last thing I wanted to do was startle them with a whole lot of originality. I'd been waiting on the delivery for a while. It was 3 days late, in fact. Customer service kept hanging up on me, and entering my tracking number on the website just caused it to turn blood red and start yelling at me in Latin. I guess the customer is always wrong. It was around that time that I noticed a curious smell coming from the gazebo. Upon investigation, I was able to solve two mysteries: what had happened to the delivery driver, and what it looks like when someone hangs himself with their own braided-up nervous system. My heart went out to the poor guy. He must have been under a lot of pressure in his delivery job. But suicide is never the answer. Things began to change for me after that. The neighbors were starting to avoid me. I mean, more than they usually did. And more out of fear instead of the usual annoyance. I heard the whispers: Mothman, curse, and asshole. I mean, not everything was different. After a meter reader and a few Jehovah's Witnesses got turned inside out, even the police stopped taking my calls. It was silly, of course. There were rational explanations for everything. Because of an architectural peculiarity, the front porch of my house sometimes forms dust devils. If one were to yawn at the wrong time, a dust devil could easily form in their mouth and suck their insides out. The rest would have been simply due to natural erosion and ants. But at the end of the day, people like to cling to their little superstitions. I suppose I can't fault them, but it's all a little silly if you ask me. I mean, just last week I posted this picture to Facebook, and my followers were all telling me that they see Mothman in the background. People just see what they want to see, I suppose. For instance, right now, I hear what sounds like heavy footsteps coming down the stairs. It's obviously just the sound of the house settling, but to someone less informed, it might sound like a huge, hulking form closing in, blocking the only exit. Now there's a scratching at the door to my man cave, which could be anything from mice in the walls to a combination of faulty wiring and sunspots. The door has now fallen down, but that's just a coincidence. I've been meaning to fix that for weeks. All of these things have rational, sane explanations for someone who doesn't have the mentality of a medieval peasant, wearing a weird hat and pointy shoes, huddled in their mud hut, afraid that the moon is looking at them. I know that it feels like there's a huge creature behind me right now, breathing down my neck, but I guarantee you that when I turn around, it will simply prove to be OFSI, Ogashawalf, Aushagarb, or 4OS, Gulf. Me man who is writing this letter. Me no see anything behind me. Me normal person, not Mothman. Me sad about things. After me write this, maybe go into living room and pull own head off. Me do this myself, not blame Mothman. Mothman not real. Mothman not real. Mothman not real.